Okay, so let's look at the next step, which is just simply we're going to show when a particular status or a tweet is clicked, we're going to show a detail page that just shows that the content of that tweet. So on that detail page or detail view, we're going to show the username. We're going to show the text of the tweet with clickable links, if there are any links in there, and then we're going to show when it was created, and then optionally, if the tweet was in reply to someone else, it'll show who it was in reply to, and optionally, if there was a location associated with a tweet, we'll show that as well. You can see in this case on the slide there's not, so it won't show up if there's not. The takeaway here is we're going to go through the exercise that we've done a lot since last class, which is to add a new view and activity, and then on list item click, we'll show that new activity and pass along a status extra. So close up this code, close up week 3, close up week 4, and open up step 5. And let's start by looking at, because this is fairly simple, let's start by looking at this running. Run as an Android application. Come back here to the emulator as it loads up. We'll be able to see our progress indicator working as we set it up in the last step, making us all feel warm and fuzzy that the application is actually doing something. And now once it's loaded, we can click any one of these guys and then it will jump over to a detail view. And it'll show things like when it was created, the text of the tweet, and this one is a retweet, but I don't know if it's, oh actually no, we don't want a retweet, we want a reply to, and I don't see any replies. So I can create a reply here in a second, but let's just go look at the code for the detail view. So first thing, let's look at the view and resources, layout. We've added a status detail view. So let's open up that and look at it in XML. It's just a simple relative layout. It doesn't have a custom class. It has a text view for the username. It has a text view for the status text. It has a text view for created at, a text view reply to, and a text view for geotext. And you can see that the visibility is set to gone for the text view for the geotext and the in reply to. And then there's one other interesting thing. Remember, we wanted to show links. So in text view, you can say this simple attribute auto link all, and that will well, here are the options. Let's see if I can get the options to show up. I can't get the options to show up. I can try it like this. There we go. Okay, so here are the options. Let me zoom in on these guys. You can say auto link none, and then it won't put any links on the text. Auto link web, and then it'll only find links to web resources like other like somebody sent around a link inside the tweet, it'll find those. And then the other options are email, phone, map, and all. And those are all things that will automatically try to detect inside of the text for you. So for email, it'll try to find emails and make those linkable, and then when you click it, it'll go to mail, the mail application. For phone, it'll go to try to make a phone call. Map, it'll try to find addresses and show those on a map. And all will try to show all, so we can just turn that on so that it'll try to auto-link all of those things that it finds inside the status detail of a tweet. Okay, let's go look at the activity. So inside of activities, we've now created a status detail activity. And that just has a reference to all those different components that we just looked at inside the XML, and then it also has a link to the status or tweet that is displaying. And then on create, it sets the content view to that detail view that we created, calls this little helper set of views. And then you can see that the way that it gets a link to the stat or a reference to the status that we're going to be showing on the detail view is by getting it out of the extras. And this is again a little bit of a review from the last class, but in case you don't remember, and when you start up an intent, you can pass along something called extras to that intent. Those extras can be some instructions, sort of in the form of primitive variables, like passing along some string variables or integer variables, or it can be data that you want to show inside the intent, in the view on the intent, either primitive data, or if you have more complex object data, you can either make that serializable data to pass along. And in this case, the status is serializable, so we can get that extra out of the intent that's coming into the new detail view as a serializable, and we use this status constant, which is defined up here on line 15 of status detailed list activity, just as a string. Remember, all the extras are kind of like key value pairs on the intent. And then finally we show status, and then we just show status is right here on line 33. It's just a bunch of conditional to figure out if we've got a date for when the status was created, whether or not the in reply to screen name is null or not, and the geolocation, whether that's null. Basically, whether or not the tweet was in reply to another user, and whether or not we can show that, and whether or not it had a location. And then we, in those cases, just set the text of the of those components to what we want to show, and then make them visible. So that's pretty straightforward stuff. Setup views is again called in the onCreate, and that's where we get reference to all those components. So that's pretty straightforward stuff. Let's see how this actually gets kicked off in status list activity. On list item click, which is on line 85. Remember these conditionals that we put in before. If the view that was clicked was the header view or the footer view, we need to do those load new or load older tweets. But otherwise, we know that it's a status, and we want to show the detail for that status. So notice that I've got a little note here. I don't want to say, as I originally said in my code, and found out the wrong way that it was the wrong, or found out the hard way that it was the wrong thing to do, to try to get the status that I want to pass to the detail view off of the adapter. Because if I get an item at a position, the position of the view that's clicked, in this case, it's not going to account for the header and footer in the adapter. So it's going to be basically the position that's coming in is accounting for the header or footer, or I guess probably just the header. But the adapter, if I say get an item at position, it is not accounting for the header, so I'm going to get an off by one error there. But if I do instead get list view get item at position and cast that to a status, then that will be the right status. And then I can create a new intent. Everybody's seen this type of code a few times by now. This is the intent where we start up another activity, and then I put the status into the extra with the key value of that constant from the status detail activity, and then start the activity. And then everything should work just fine. Let's see, this one's got a link, so I can click this one, and you can see that the auto link is working there. When I go to the winners for this week, it's loading up inside the web browser. And we got 1 minute left, so I'm just going to assume that's going to load at some point. And there we go. We've shown details of a particular tweet. So the takeaway here is a text view can automatically recognize different kinds of data that a user can interact with, so like web links, phone numbers, addresses, that kind of stuff. So what we've done today is we've shown the user their Twitter home line by loading it when the app starts, if they're already authenticated, and we allow them to load newer or older tweets with those headers off the list. And we learned about the header and footer views on the list to let them do that. And then we learned how to do some work in the background with just a basic Java thread so the UI remains responsive. And we learned about recognizing links in text views with that auto link method or attribute of the text view. So if you want to do some more work to kind of cement in what we've learned today, You may have noticed, and I think somebody even commented last week, that authentication, when we're authenticating with Twitter or exchanging the response tokens or the request tokens for the user's OAuth token, that the app kind of slows down and gets unresponsive. So what you could try to do is basically on line 28 of the authorization activity is where we do the work where we call app.authorized. So you could put that in this thread and then maybe show some progress while that's happening. And then when the thread is finished, you just need to call back with a runnable through a handler and call finish on that authorization activity. So that would be some good homework. And then next week, we'll look at how to do some simpler or more robust background task with async task. And along the way, we will load the user avatars, and we will also tweet from the application.
Cool. That sounds fun.
So just 2 minutes over, we've got a lot of stuff in today.
Yeah, we did.
If anybody wants to hang around for questions, I'm game.
I did get a couple more questions related to that last segment that I wanted to ask you. We had some people interested in combining the different actionable links so that you could say support email and maps, but not web, perhaps. And then somebody asked if you can add your own actionable links.
I'm not very familiar with something like adding your own. It might be possible, but I'm not sure. I don't know if there's really a framework for that or not. That's something we could take to the forums. But to answer the earlier question, I think you can do this. Is everybody seeing that? I'm delimiting these with a pipe.
So it's a straight up and down bar, not a forward slash, right?
Yeah, it doesn't like that. It's blowing up. String types not allowed at AutoLink with value email dash or email pipe phone. Let me see if it doesn't like the space. Okay, that was it. It didn't like the space. So you can't put a space in there, but you delimit it with a pipe symbol, which is the up and down text thing.
And then just to go back to one of the questions we had earlier about the OAuth property file, since we did have some people who missed last week, if you wouldn't mind showing that file again so that people who are getting started.
I never tire.
You've shown it like 50 times. I
never tire showing that. Okay, so I'm going to show this in week 1, step 1, because I don't actually have my keys in there. But what you need to do when you check out the code to every project that we have here is go to resources, the resources directory, right-click it and say new folder, and then create a folder called raw. And you can see I already have it created here. And inside of raw, create a file called oauth.properties. And inside oauth.properties, put these keys. It's just a standard Java properties file. Put these keys, consumer key and consumer secret key, and then the values that you put in here are the consumer key and consumer secret key from your application's page on Twitter. So if you go to the detail for that application, you can grab those keys. And earlier in the class last week, we gave out a link for a screencast that shows how to get those applications set up. So you need to do that for each one of these guys. Create a raw directory and create oauth.properties as a file inside of there.
And that screencast for everybody is on YouTube on the O'Reilly channel, so it's pretty easy to find. And I think the link is also in the free videos for the overview week as well, so you can find that. Great. Thank you, Tony. Well, we know we didn't get to everybody's questions, but we're going to get to them on the forums. So thank you all so much for participating today and asking your great questions. And Tony, thank you so much. A round of applause for Tony.
Yay!
And please do join us next week. We're going to be able to tweet. And one more just quick mention, thank you to our sponsor, AdMob.
Yeah, thanks again for everybody for showing up, and we'll see you next week.